Alright, so this is the video where I talk a little bit about patch notes and I talk a little bit about what build I'm playing in Harvest League. So this won't be very long because I don't believe in talking long about patch notes. To me, it's fucking pointless. So you can read the whole thing yourself. It's on the forums. It's not that long. It's a lot of bullshit mostly, but yep, you can just, go through the key points that interest you. So I'm going to break this down into two different categories. I'm just going to briefly talk about the things that are good and then the things that are bad. By bad and good, I mean nerfs and buffs. I don't mean bad and good. It's all perspective what you play. So, the cool thing, Delirium went core. That's very cool. We now will have access to cluster jewels consistently throughout the game, starting in Act 6, I believe. So, that's nice. Maybe I can get my last unique cluster eventually. A lot of two hands have had their value shifted, and you can get the exact bases and uniques on the forum page now. But ultimately, majority of the damage of two hands wasn't changed at all. All the value shifts between the lesser percentages and the base changes made no real difference for things like Disfavor. Starforge got totally shit on it, lost like 120 DPS, I think. But things like Morohi, Caleb's Primacy, and Dancing Rich got really big damage buffs. The real star from this entire two-hand change is Valaxes. Certain high-end bases like Valaxes have received massive damage increases, like upwards of 30% damage increases, along with getting maim for implicits and things like bleed. So Valaxes, you'll see craft weapons will be really, really good, but aside from craft weapons and the specific uniques I named, most of these changes are shit for two hands. A lot of spells had their numbers tweaked, but for whatever reason, the big star of the spell changes was Fireball. It received like huge buffs, not only to its base damage, but now it has Rolling Flames just built in. So they tanked Rolling Flames, but they just gave it Rolling Flames. So it basically has a similar scaling to what Rolling Flames was for AoE changes, and it gained 60% damage effectiveness. So massive damage increase for Fireball. Other things like Frostbolt and Freezing Pulse also received some damage, but this is like a real spicy one. So there were 4 builds that were the key offenders last league for being way too strong and way too for lack of a better term, busted and overpowered for the amount of investment required. Those 4 was Dual Wield Impale, Archmage Brands, the Warcry spamming builds, and then Herald builds was, enemy number 1. People forget about the first 3 and just focus on Herald builds, but I can assure you that if Herald builds did not exist last league, the other 3 would take the spot and be just as absurd. So we'll go through how they were all, nerfed. Some of them are nerfed but playable, and some of them are just dead. Dual Wield Impale received a 20% loss in DPS for dual wielding. Almost all Impale values were changed and reduced. Deep Cuts was removed entirely. So even with all of that, it still doesn't really shake dual wield too much. You could still, again, going from 20 mil damage to even 10 mil damage really doesn't make that much of a fucking difference for those builds. So between that and then Cyclone getting slightly nerfed, they removed the stun immunity, but again, that's not a real big difference. Those builds, you should have 6 to 7k life anyway, so you're effectively stun immune for most of it anyway. So yeah, that's a big one, so you should be fine. I think the bigger offense is the fact that Shikari no longer makes you poison immune. So for a lot of melee builds and non-CI builds, you lost the poison immunity from Shikari, and the same thing from the anti-venom. So there goes our poison immunity. So CI is looking better and better. So brands were nerfed, but again, still playable. They specifically nerfed Archmage's interaction with Brand Recall, reducing that massive damage interaction. Fever Mind is now limit to 1. Brand Recall no longer refreshes duration, so it's going to feel a lot more clicky, a lot more, you have to pay attention a lot more, and that's not personally for me. So yeah, it's more like brands are more like weird totems now, and I'm not a huge fan of that, so they will not be on my list of things to play. But again, nerfed, but still playable. Warcry and perma-rage stacking is not nearly as OP as it used to be. The damage stacking was changed along with almost every single interaction with Warcry, so it's more quote-unquote fair and engaging playstyle now. No longer just having your 400 mil damage with your face breakers, so now it's an actual interaction with your playstyle and more of an interaction with Berserker, which I feel like they made way too overly convoluted for a subclass that's supposed to be dumb, attack, smash, I'm a Berserker. Now it has interactions with Exert and power radiuses and all this other stuff. I mean, Exert, they're just trying to rename it, but it's just fucking Fizz Pen. I'm not sure why they're hiding it behind that thin veil, but yes, war cries were basically nerfed, again, nerfed, but playable. And the biggest offender was the Herald build, and that was fixed by one swift nerf to Purposeful Harbinger. And Herald builds previously, the real standard endgame ones, had 600% aura effect. On the low end, even for solo self, you had 450% aura effect. They now have a cap per character on how Purposeful Harbinger works. So you now went from 600% aura effect to 40% aura effect. So unlike Brands, unlike Warcries, unlike Dual Wield Impale, which all were nerfed playable, Herald's is 100% dead. Rest in peace, it had a good run. And if you dare come to me, or you dare make the declaration that Headhunter is dead just because you can no longer have fucking, temp chains on you even though you're hexproof, that is the stupidest shit I've ever heard. Headhunter with self-cursing was like driving a fucking Bugatti Veyron, $3 million, 0 to 60 and fuck, and now you're driving a Lamborghini. Well, guess what? The rest of the people are in fucking Hondas, alright? You're still in your Lambo. It's fine. It's fine. Now, every time patch notes comes out and I'm playing a build, my first instinct is to hit Control F and type in what I'm doing, which is, for me, Spellslinger. Spellslinger was not mentioned once. Cool. So that leads me to what I'm playing, which is a Chaos Trickster triple Spellslinger. Now that's clearly a mouthful, but this is my potential harvest build page, and one of the three things, I picked one. This was the build I'm going to be playing, and it's basically multiple Spellslinger setups that auto-cast Soul Rend, Essence Strain, and Contagion to basically allow for a very fluid playstyle, along with a defensive cast damage taken setup hooked up to a dash second wind setup. All of this activated by you just, frenzy barraging or frenzy GMPing with curse and hit and despair. But it just leads you to be able to walk around, hit right click, pretty much everything dies. Great for mapping, great for progressing the early atlas, not so great for bossing, but that's its purpose. To map, get to maps, to map, to progress the atlas to yellow and potentially high yellow to red maps. Then I'll find some gear that lets me play a better build, a more endgame viable build. This is what the tree looks like. I am a Trickster. The gear setup is pretty simple. There's no real uniques required. And for the ascendancies, you pick up Patient Reaper, then Prolonged Pain. Great quality of life leveling for Patient Reaper. Prolonged Pain is the same. And then Ghost Dance, and then Escape Artist. If you don't want to get Escape Artist, you want some more quality of life leveling, feel free to pick up Swift Killer. But eventually you want to get Escape Artist. Eventually you'd like to go CI and make that whole swap to make you, a little bit safer. But this is what the tree basically looks like. There is one threshold setup over here for a large, medium, and then small interaction, hence the less points on the tree. But this is the basic framework. It looks a little sloppy, but I can assure you it is basically, whatever, point perfect to what I want. And the only things that are new is it picks up the new elusive node. Gaining elusive on kill just feels fucking nice. And picks up the new Serpentine Spellslinger node. Again, name drop Spellslinger. But this really gives you poison on spells. That's not so important. The most important thing is it gives you -5 chaos res for poison enemies, which is everything you're attacking. So just like some, it's like Poison Pen kind of. So very nice. But it's a very easy to level thing. Pretty much just somehow get to like Act 3, hook up your Spellslingers, and enjoy the ride. Like my little document says, I will be farming a Tabby, so it's very nice to get the humility card. It's great for getting levels, great for getting some nice uniques and gear, great for engaging with the mechanic, assuming it's viable to be used in early levels. Also, since it's Act 6 and on, I should be getting Deliriums, I should be getting some cool interactions with Incursion, etc. So very nice just to farm a Tabby early on. Plan on having my Tabby, if not the end of Night 1, which will be like level 80, to maybe the second day of League. So looking forward to that. Here's an example of just some shitter on hardcore that played pretty much a similar type of build. His tree's a little different, but this was the basic gem setup, kind of similar to what I'm doing. But yeah, you can see the links are, again, not too complicated. Majority of it's just linked to Spellslingers, and you end up grabbing Charisma that lets you, allocate all the Spellslinger stuff. No uniques required. This dude has some fucking meme armor on. You pretty much try to get +1 chaos on your wand. If you can get +1 chaos on your shield, cool. If you can't, you can't. Whatever you got, that's what you got, and that's how the build works, which is perfect for solo self-found. That about wraps up my thoughts on the patch notes, thoughts on any of the changes, any of the cool things that happened. I look forward to playing the triple Chaos Spellslinger build on League Start tomorrow, and I hope to see you all there. If you have any questions about the build or suggestions for League Start or suggestions in general, any feedback, let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in Harvest League. So have a good night, have a good day, Fucking talk to you, whatever. I'm out. Bye-bye.